David,
Okay.
would you like to
Hello,
do our
everybody.
usual
Shabbat
reading?
shalom. Shabbat shalom, everybody.
Shabbat
Shabbat
shalom.
shalom.
And bonjour, Monsieur le Quebec, Marty. And and today I'm going to do a short, rather humorous poem. I thought it's time for a little bit of humor today. It was written by Reginald Butler, published in Punch in 1923, but I found it in the Journal of the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada about 60 years ago. It's called Relativity. There was a young lady named Bright, whose speed was far faster than light. She set out one day in a relative way and returned on the previous night.
Oh, golly, that's good. That's a good one.
Thank you.
It's very clever. So before we start, I'd like to just read the Mishabera, a part of the Mishabera service instead of the usual Debbie Friedman version. I'd like to do that because some of us are looking at upcoming surgery or other illnesses and like that. I've been asked not to mention names. Okay. So there is a Mishabera prayer that is also read. And it is, may the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless and heal those who are ill. May the Blessed Holy One be filled with compassion for their health to be restored and their strength to be revived. May God swiftly send them a complete renewal of body and spirit. And let us say, Amen.
Amen.
Just before we start our readings and study of the book of Exodus, I'm still hung up on Genesis. And we in the past have read the book of Job, which is one of the later books in the Tanakh. And I was wondering if anyone would can think back to what we had discussed about 4 years ago now, when we read from the book of Job, or if anyone knows something about the story, if they would like to say something about it, because it almost dovetails into the story of, guess who?
Exodus.
Exodus. Well, yes, it does. And it's a good junction. It's a good junction. It has echoes of the story of Joseph.
Exodus is also studied as a work of literature. I know at the Hebrew University, the English department offers a course in the book of Job, and we studied it in high school as a work of literature. So I agree, it is a very important story about testing, the testing of a person.
Yeah. Wasn't Marty, what I can remember, and all I can remember that there was a lot of negativity, or some negativity with the story of Job, if I'm getting that right, if my memory serves.
In what way, Michael?
I'm not sure.
Because I didn't take it as a book of negativity. Yes, bad things happen to good people.
Right.
Yes, that's what I was.
Okay, this is Telushkin's book, It is, what are the parallels between the life of Joseph and the life of Job? And how are they, and what befalls them? Yes, David, and then
Well,
Pastor Bruce.
well, both cases, both Job and Joseph, begin their lives in relative luxury, and they have everything, and they're both tested. Joseph
Right.
is thrown into
Mhm.
the pit with the slithery D's, and Job is given a skin condition that's so bad he has to scratch himself with glass, and so they're both tested, and I think the comparison is that they both pass the tests.
Right.
Yes, and that's but what gets them through passing that test? Okay, yes, Pastor Bruce.
I would say their faith and trust in their creator, that the creator has a bigger plan for anything and everything that comes their way.
Mhm.
Plus
Very
a lot of
good, very good.
Yeah.
Yes.
plus a lot of Advil.
Don, yes, please.
Well, first of all, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, we hear you fine.
Okay. I've got one microphone split between three computers here, and sometimes it doesn't work too well on one. Anyway, I don't see a connection, a strong connection between Job and Joseph. I mean, I see a connection between Job and Ecclesiastes and to Gilgamesh, you know, centuries before the Bible in this story. And then also Job introduces Satan, who was not present around the time of Jacob. And that's a huge difference to me. And then I think last session I mentioned that at the end of Job, where everybody's still wondering what happened, that God's voice comes out of the whirlwind and says, you cannot know, what I did. You cannot know the reasons for fully experience me. And I don't think that appears anywhere in Joseph, Jacob's family. So I just see huge difference.
Okay. I saw Chris's hand up, and also David. So Chris, you're first, then David.
Good morning. I'm Shabbat. I just love the idea that they both have a great relationship with God, beginning with or Isaac, as well as Joseph, and of course Job. But I love the display of the magnitude and the power of God in both stories. He does the incredible development of the soul of both people, but he also manifests the tremendous power that he's got to make things almost that we would call impossible possible. So that's a good place for me to anchor for when things are not just perfect.
Thank you. Good insight. Yes, David.
Yes, there is a book which is one of my favorite stories.
Yeah.
It's called Through Rugged Ways to the Stars. It's the autobiography of Harlow Shapley, who is one of the most famous astronomers of the 20th century. And he talks about Job as being a swift-moving doctoral oral examination. God is just pouring questions into him so fast that Job is barely able to try to answer them. But it's a very powerful moment, I believe.
They're similar. As I said, they're parallel stories. They're not identical. It has also been said that that God tests the righteous more than the average person.
Absolutely.
And that's that. Any comments about that? Does this just dovetail into the stories of Job and of
Joseph.
all of the patriarchs?
Right.
Okay. Yes, Helene.
The righteous hear God's word clearer than the others. The righteous want to understand what God wants for them. So they at least open their hearts and their minds to God. So I believe that's a good statement.
Thank you. So what we're basically getting after, Ricky, where are you? Oh, Ricky, you abandoned us. Okay, right when we need her most. In the Sephirotic chart, all of the and this is Kabbalah, all of the other attributes of God are above mankind, which is called Malchut.
Mhm.
Yesod is reserved as a sephirot between man and all of the other attributes of God.
Mhm.
Joseph is considered a tzaddik, a righteous person.
Okay.
And a tzaddik is part of the sephirot of Yesod, which links man and his domain, Malchut, to all of the upper sephirot. And so it's a two-way street. It's like directing traffic and being part of the traffic,
Mhm.
or the traffic directing you.
Mhm.
It's sort of in between. And so it's just a different take on interpretation. And but the saying that I was mentioning is one of the Kabbalistic rabbis explaining certain things. So I think that all we want to say is that there have been tremendous times for the world, for mankind, for nations, for communities, and for individuals, that where they go through a period of time and it seems so chaotic and wild, out of control, and through it all, what gets us through it is faith, and that's hope. Faith instills hope in a better future. And if you think, and that is one of the messages why at Passover time, we always go back to remember all of the tragic things that befell the Jews in Egypt.
Right.
Okay, and with it, you have to have faith and hope that there will be a better tomorrow. And I think that those messages, whether you look at Joseph or you look at the book of Job, they go through a tremendous series of trials, if you will, trials of faith.
Mhm. Mhm.
Has
And
there been a better tomorrow since
excuse
then?
me?
Has there, Marty? This is thousands of years. has there been a better tomorrow for Jews today, based on what you're saying?
It's a series of ups and downs. It's the downs. If you look at your life, instead of saying, "Oh, I goofed it up,"
Mhm.
if you use it as a learning experience, you never have a down.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Think about that because it's a more positive way of looking at these events.
But is it an honest way to look at
Sure.
it? I mean, you know, we still are experiencing very terrible things. You know, if you want to put on some rose-colored glasses in some way and look and say, well, it's half full, not half empty. But I'm taking the position of looking at things today from a realistic point of view. What has changed? I mean, now we have technologies and tremendous things that did not exist thousands of years ago. But the Jews have managed to survive all these years, but not with huge hardships, tremendous holocausts, and this goes on and on. And the Jews today still are experiencing plenty more difficulties than any other group in the world. And that's why in
Okay.
Israel, let me finish for a second. That's why Israel is the only country in the world, little tiny country, that has to live in the house in has to have a bomb shelter.
Okay.
You see, there are
It's
things
a
that,
good point. It's a good point.
yeah, there are certain things that you have to, at least I have to look at, because I listen, I don't know a lot of this stuff, but I try to think. I try to be a good thinker as best as I can. And say and speak my piece when I hear certain things, and it's not to denigrate anyone, but just for me to bring certain things out. That's all.
Okay. Thank you, David. And I think that's Wendy also.
Me as well. We both have something to say.
Mine is very short. It's just when we first started talking about everything the trials that we have to go through, and that God tests the good or the righteous much more than anybody else. All I could think of was, it's easy to be bad. It's easy to be mean and to be a bully. It's difficult to do things right and always be good. And so we're always good, and the tests are there, and you take the high road.
Yeah, thanks, Wendy.
Good
The story
point.
I wanted to share. Thanks, Wendy. I think it's a very good point. But the story I wanted to share with everyone is one of the things that makes me so proud to be Jewish is how over the millennia we have developed a specific sense of humor to take care of this. And the best example I can offer you is one of the best memories that I have with my mom and my grandmother. The three of us went to see Fiddler as a play, Fiddler on the Roof, in the late 1960s when it was in Montreal. And the line when Tevye is praying to God and he says, "You have chosen us for this and you have chosen us for this. For once, could you please choose somebody else?"
I remember that. That's right. That's right. Ricky.
Yeah, I want to pick up on what Marty said and answer to
Michael.
Michael G. That, the ups and downs. All right, we had a down in Egypt, and we had an up in Canaan. And we've had lots of downs, but we had a nice period of up in Muslim Spain period. It was very good.
Right. Thank you.
From there, then we got evicted from there, and Amsterdam became, another golden age. That part of the world, and we all use that. I personally believe that because of the Holocaust and the guilt of so many people in the world, that the state of Israel was formed. So
Right.
it's a down that led to an up. So it cycles, but we can't necessarily know where we are in this particular cycle. We may be in a medium down, we may be in a deep down, we may be on the way up to a next, who knows what, that will be good for the Jews. So it's just, this is what is. And, you know, it's a roller coaster, it's a pendulum, it's whatever you want to call it. It's all over the place. And Job goes through that, and Exodus goes through that. And so, is the glass half empty or half full? Yes. You know, that's all I have to say. It's both. You know, I think I once shared with you guys a horrible dream I had. I was a fish, and I was caught in a rocky area when the ocean was like sort of lapping at this rocky area. And I didn't know if the tide was coming in to help wash me out to sea where I'd be free, or if the tide was going out, in which case I would be stranded and die. I mean, so that's why it was, but for that moment I was okay. And eventually it was what it was. I had no idea at the time what way it was going to go. And we don't know either. So yes, we've had bad times, and we're going through another one, but that doesn't mean we haven't had good times, and we're going to have more good times in some time. So that's
Interesting. Before I recognize Helene, Gail, did you want to say something or not? No. Okay, then Helene and then Don.
I have to go back to your birth and my birth. We are born with ups and downs. How do we learn to crawl? How do we learn to pull ourselves up on a chair without falling on our faces? How do we learn anything without having downs? The downs teach us and give us permission to continue growing. And I think this is a theme for life. The downs are where we learn and give us permission to continue growing.
It's a good point. It reminds me of each one of the stories that we have been reading in the book of Genesis. There are lots of down periods, lots of good periods. And one of the messages that in our reading from other scholars is that if you think about, take the more recent ones we've studied. Well, we can go back. Suppose Eve did not decide to eat the apple, or if Adam decided not to eat the apple, what would have happened to mankind? Yes, Chris.
According to the promises of God, he was going to keep them in the garden forever, and they were going to enjoy the land without any work, no hunger, no tears, no poverty, no anything. And they would have been in a delightful state the rest of their lives. And I'm not sure they would have been all perfect either, because trial brings a lot of good things into our lives as well, not just misery, or misery for a moment, but then as in grow out of it. But we would have been walking with God the rest of our lives, and that's the beauty of it. And I know that not necessarily means, well, I don't know what necessarily means, but that was something that we were told, that he will walk with us. I still think he walks with us, though. I still think that he is in the midst of us for those who recognize it, for those who hears him. He's very real too, like probably Adam and Eve.
Okay, Don.
but the points are coming fast and furious here. I'm not sure I can remember what I wanted to hit, but first of all, I think optimism is always more productive than pessimism. So I think we want to be happy and healthy, and we have no choice but to look at the glass half full. But just going way back to what David said about Harlow Shatley, there was a writer, some may remember, Emmanuel Velikovsky, going way back, who wrote a best-selling book. He was, in my mind, the greatest Jew since Josephus. And the focus of his writing was really to understand anti-Semitism and why we keep going to war. And his theory revolved around the fact that in biblical times there was a cosmic catastrophe, a close approach of a comet that caused great destruction, and in fact happened at the time of the Exodus, which answers a lot of questions about what could have caused all that plagues. But anyway, Harlow Shatley destroyed Velikovsky, and he led a group of scientists who threatened Macmillan Publishing with withdrawing all their science textbooks if they didn't cease publication in Velikovsky's book. So I've never been a big fan of Harvard's astronomer at that time, but I'm just rereading Velikovsky again, and I think his historical perspective is worth a read. Anyway, enough of that advertisement. But Pastor Bruce has signed off, but I just want to remind us that with the ups and downs of the Jews, one of the worst was the destruction of the Second Temple, 60 AD, I think, which is really when Christianity got a grip. And in those days, all Christians were Jews. All the original Christians were Jews. During that period of great pessimism and destruction, and the loss of the temple for the second time, the people had lost hope. And, there was no central place to go. Rabbis were just beginning to form rabbinical Judaism. Everybody felt completely lost. I can't say it was worse than the Holocaust. It was close. So I'm really into historic, and I think when we think of the ups and downs, I tend to drill deeper into what it was all about, what caused, what were the repercussions of it. And certainly Israel was a repercussion of the Holocaust.
Okay, I know, Anita, I want to cut you short just a little bit here because there are other people who want to say a few words here. And Grace, would you like to mention it to everyone what you had mentioned here about pain, growth, and joy?
Yeah, in the chat, it's like it's already really been mentioned, but suffering, pain means we get to learn something. So that's the growth. We learn something from that experience, right? And eventually that will turn into an experience that we'll recall, where we can then have joy in our lives as a result of something happening that was not, fun. That's all.
Okay. what about if, Noah was called a righteous man in Torah? Okay, but that he is described as a righteous man, and we really don't know what it was about Noah that was righteous. It doesn't mention. It's another, as I usually call it, duh moment. It's an empty space, and we couldn't come up with a good reason why. But what would have happened if he did not believe in God? Would he have ever built the ark?
No, never.
Okay. What about Abraham? If he did not, yes, Pastor Bruce.
I think what we're looking at is faith.
Yes.
Everything is by faith in the people you're mentioning. They heard and they acted upon what they heard in faith without knowing what it was that was, the city, the final result of an ark with safety in a flood. All those things were done by actions that came through faith.
Good point. Because we can say the same thing about the life of all the different trials for Abraham are very explicit, but then you also have Isaac, and you also have the Jacob story. What would have happened if? Okay, each step of the way, what would have happened if? And then you have the Joseph story, and you have other types of what would have happened if. And so this is, as Pastor Bruce points out, it's faith, but faith gives you hope. It leads to hope. And I think that is the main essence of the book of Genesis. Now, we're also going to say something similar about the rest of the books in Torah. The same thing, but the book of Genesis starts the whole concept. And so I think that, yes, Gail.
Yeah, I'd like to read something that Friedman has written about Genesis and Exodus. It's kind of an overview, not very long.
Yes, please. I was going to do that later, but you do it.
It's very short. It's only a few sentences, but it's very profound and kind of clarifies. He starts with Exodus. He says, the book of Exodus tells the story of the birth of a nation in slavery and ends with the nation's establishment of its own center, leaders, and symbols of freedom. However, Genesis involves a continuous narrowing of attention from the universe to the earth to humanity to a particular family. Okay, that's what Genesis does. Exodus begins to broaden the circumference of attention again as the family grows into a nation and comes into conflict with another nation. Whereas Genesis sets the rest of the books of the Bible in context, Exodus does not set them in context so much as introduce fundamental components that will function centrally in almost all the coming books of the Bible. Exodus introduces the nation of Israel. It introduces prophecy. It introduces law. Arguably, most important of all, it introduces the theme of, he says, Yahweh, becoming known to the world. So there's, one book blends right into the other, and then Exodus picks up but with a different theme.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. I was going to read what Rabbi Plowd had to say, but there's no sense duplicating.
Yeah.
But
okay.
but the book of Exodus is actually a continuation of the book of Genesis.
Yeah, but it gets into family.
That is correct.
Yeah.
That's Gail is very correct.
Well, it's not me, it's Friedman I'm quoting, not me.
No, but it's a very good one. And it also deals with the further history of faith. How out of, and again, following the theme that Gail just discussed, how it then is. Do you remember the old movie, A Birth of a Nation?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. It shows all of the warts as well as all of the good things that could come out of it and out of our country. And in it follows a family. The first one did not. Later on, it did. How there was expansion, and so this too is another way of showing the ups and downs that we've had in our country, and we've had it in our family. But we created a nation, warts and all. Warts and all. We can discuss the warts, or we can say these are the things we have to work on. We still have to work on. Yes.
Can I ask Pastor
Please.
Bruce a question, and you as well? You both used the word faith. Would you please define the word faith?
Okay, Pastor Bruce, you're first.
The essence of things hoped for but not yet seen.
I think I would just add a little footnote, a very minor footnote. It's faith in ourselves and others, as well as God.
So it's a hope, not necessarily a belief. Is that what you're saying? Question?
Yeah, that there is something that faith in God, of course, is and faith in you're expecting something to happen, but you can't see it yet. And I think that's most of these, I think when you look at this history of what's here with the prophets and the patriarchs, that's the element that ties them all together, is that they had that hope of something that was not yet experienced or seen.
Okay, I think where I get uncomfortable sometimes with the word faith is someone can have faith in all kinds of weird and not necessarily good things.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, referring just to politics right now, there's some people that believe and have faith in some very odd things. I'm being polite. So that's why the word gets thrown around, but sometimes I'm not real clear if it's necessarily a good thing.
Well,
I think people misuse the word quite frequently, actually, but that's a whole nother issue. But I think when you're looking at what we're looking at as a whole, the Bible, as you're looking at it, the texts, what I see is faith of each one of these people. There was something beyond what they could see, and they were trusting that it was going to happen.
But you also have to have trust that what you're reading is all good, all true, all et cetera, et cetera.
And yes, and I will say, I know not all of us think that about this, but I do. I mean, that's just the way I look at it that way. So.
Yes, Michael.
I would say this way, that faith is a religious way of demonstrating or saying hope.
Okay. I I have a very good friend who's an atheist, and we've gotten into some discussions about this because he's very hung up on that if you can't know it through your senses, it doesn't exist. And so you can say, we use the term a leap of faith, okay, into the unknown, the unseen, the unprovable. But whether I'm reminded of some of the writings of Martin Buber and Heschel, and so is God out there, or is God within us?
Both.
Oh, I got some hands up. Go, Pastor Bruce. Pastor Bruce, let me let Joanne speak first. She hasn't had a chance yet. Please.
Thank you. I think that when we are conceived, at that exact moment, the day, God, faith, that's there in our conception. And so it is one of our senses. And most of us continue throughout the rest of our life looking for that conception point, that excitement, that knowing God.
Okay. Very good. Pastor Bruce.
If you don't mind, a different a definition that's from the book of Hebrews, which is of course in the Christian part of the Bible. Here's the definition, okay, right from the book of Hebrews. Now, faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we do not see. This is what the ancients or the prophets and say, the patriarchs were commended for.
So,
Marty, I'd just like to
yeah,
say,
go ahead, Gail,
I didn't
please.
mean to get into a sidebar here, and I'm not challenging anybody. It's just
Oh,
a question, and I think we should move on, really, because we could
okay.
dedicate a
We
whole
are
hour to it.
digressing, and I can understand, but I think that this is one of the lessons that, or there are many lessons, but just one that we've been exploring. And now, as Gail mentioned, we are going to be going into the book of Exodus. Just want to mention a few things that about the book of Exodus, and that is we're going to have a prologue that's going to, if we get to it later today, that will be fine. Then the mission, okay, confrontation, okay, the road to Sinai, revelation and commandment, the laws, the sanctuary and service, another mention of the covenant. And so it is a whole train of events that we're going to be beginning. And just thought it would be reasonable to keep that in mind. Well, and there are three motifs. Okay, we're going to have a wilderness theme, a covenant theme, and exaltation theme. There are other motifs where God overcomes the powers of the deep and commands the sea. An infant who has become ruler or savior and is rescued and winds up becoming a major savior of the Jewish people. Any idea about the name Exodus? Where does that come from?
75.
Exit, exit.
No, that's the English.
Well, the word exit is also derived from the same word. Okay.
70.
It's Greek.
70.
Okay. There was a period. Okay, and I don't know. This comes up periodically. I'll read here. The book is derived from the Greek Exodus, which is paralleled by an Old Hebrew inscription, the book of the departure from Egypt. So this was it's a Greek word that we use to describe what the original name, the book of the departure from Egypt. And it's also has been called the book of names, because when we start out in our reading shortly, it's going, the book will be a recitation of names.
Marty, excuse me.
Yes.
The title of this particular chapter is Shemot in Hebrew.
That's right.
Which means names.
Name. That's right.
Means, plural.
That's right.
Yep.
So we're going to be taking an interesting journey, if you will. I'm not going to go into other commentaries at this time, but based on what Gail has requested, if we start with the book of Exodus, chapter 1, verse 1.
Any bets on when we'll finish?
Excuse me?
Any bets on what year we'll finish?
It may turn out to be at least a year. Let's put it that way. It
Okay,
will
well,
be yes, David. David had his hand up. Or that's a windy hand. Wait a minute.
There's only 40 chapters in this. There were 50
no.
in Genesis, so it should take
know.
less. Yeah.
Yes, David.
I was volunteering to read. That's all.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, David.
I was just saying that I was just volunteering to read. I didn't. have
Oh,
any,
okay, sure.
Wait a minute. Shouldn't we wait for Simchat Torah though? That's we got the Torah, so it seems like we should. I'm just throwing that.
Okay, show of hands. How many want to wait a week?
That would be next Wednesday officially.
Yes, so how many want to wait till next week to begin the book? Okay, listen, we are so far off the usual schedule. That's all I can say.
Right.
But it doesn't matter. Do we just want to start today with the book of Exodus?
Yes.
Okay, by silence, David, read. Okay.
Okay, Todarabah. Chapter 1, Exodus. Now these are the names of the sons of Israel who came into Egypt with Jacob. Every man came with his household: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, and Benjamin, Dan and Naphtali, Gad and Asher. And all the souls that came out of the loins of Jacob were 70 souls. And Joseph was in Egypt already. And Joseph died, and all his brethren and all that generation. And the children of Israel were fruitful, and increased abundantly and multiplied, and waxed exceeding mighty, and the land was filled with them.
Okay,
Now there arose a new
let's stop
king.
at that point. Let's stop at that point and any comments about what we have been reading or what David read for us. Well, by reading the names, what did the book of Genesis end with? The names.
The
And so
name.
that's right. So this is a link. This is a link to the book of Genesis. Okay, it's reiterating what we had read. Do you find anything interesting in that? In that paragraph, if you will?
70.
They were being fruitful and multiplying. That's follow the first commandment.
Okay. They're doing all right. They're having their golden age in that time.
Let me get my
What
chart.
else? What else is going? What else is missing? Yes, Joanne.
They don't seem to have someone in charge. They're multiplying, etc. But there doesn't seem to be a person in charge of them. You know, at least I looked at this and I'm wondering, okay, who's in charge? Where's that person? A little bit later, maybe we'll find him, but not right at the beginning. There's no one holding them together. And I wonder who is.
So this is you bring up a very interesting point. And I think it's a very important point. What happens to people in general when they're living the life of Riley? When they are living with all the comforts,
They become complacent.
they become complacent. And so they wind up creating a new sea for themselves, a new era of chaos. They create it by their own, by forgetting.
Sometimes not caring.
Excuse me, Michael, I didn't hear it.
Sometimes not caring.
Caring, okay. Caring about what?
About other people beside themselves.
Okay.
That's what happens when you become complacent. You're satisfied with what you got, and you seem to forget about the rest of the world.
All right.
Which is possible.
In the context of Torah, what also happens? Yes, Joanne.
I don't see any mention of a temple or church or a gathering on Sunday or Saturday or Friday night. Almost no respect for themselves as a people.
Okay, respect, but what else? What's missing in this paragraph? Besides Joseph's two sons.
Well,
Okay, Ricky and then Don.
yeah, I'm not going to go to what's missing, but they became fruitful and this multiplied and increased, fruitful and multiplied, so that the land was filled with them, but they're still not Egyptians. So
Right.
the fact that they were fat and happy and living the life of Riley, they overpopulated. Maybe in the eyes of the Egyptians, they overpopulated themselves. You know, the minority is growing as we are experiencing in this country. So that's what I see. That so the land was filled with them. So
Okay.
they become
Okay. Don?
I'm only counting 11 tribes. Am I missing? Is that what's?
Excuse me, I think I'm having trouble with my hearing aids. Go ahead.
I'm only counting 11 of 12 tribes you mentioned. Is there a missing tribe there or?
That's one. There's several missing things. That's right. Joseph's sons. Joseph's sons are going to be given uh, uh, positions, if you will, instead of Joseph, right? We read about Jacob taking the sons on his knees and blessing them and all of that. And that's what Joseph is told, what will happen. So is this, instead of 13, is it really 14? I mean, 12, instead of 12, is it really 13? But what else is missing? There are several missing motifs from Genesis that are very important.
I'm counting only 11.
There's 11 plus Jacob was already, Joseph was already in Egypt, so that's the next sentence.
Yes.
Uh,
So there's some there, but we've left out what is supposedly happened. What else? Probably the most important thing is left out of this entire paragraph.
I understand what you're saying.
Well, there's no mention of God.
That's
In
what I'm
Gen-
getting after.
Why would there be at this point?
That's what I'm getting after. I found it very interesting.
Yeah,
There's no
God's not.
comment as God had had said. Okay, there's no mention of God in this.
Why is that necessary?
Why would you think it is not necessary? It becomes an interesting observation. That's all I'm going to say. Yes, David.
We're only 7 lines into the book, so
I know, but even so, you would think that it's a religious text. You would expect God would be mentioned in the very first statements. Yes, David. Is that a Wendy hand?
Yeah, a lot of it, if we're talking about them living a life of Riley, so they're all fat and they're happy with what they've got. And if we go back to our last discussion on faith, I always looked at quote is God as the thing you pray to that is unseen, unfelt, but you need some higher power to feel that it'll bring things out of the cosmic void. And the thing that they're forgetting, and this is probably why they get punished, is the kind of thing where they're not thankful, they're just happy where they are, and then pretty soon God will just pull the rug out from under them because they haven't proven that they were worth what they've done. Because that's always my prayers when things are going well. It's like, please do not pull the rug out from me now. So, and that's what's going to happen. They're just not happy. I mean, they're happy, but they forget who's got them there.
Okay, very good point. So I just found that because the next any other comments about this first paragraph, if you will? Well, let's read the second paragraph with this in mind. Okay. So verse 8, Ricky, did you want to read? And then we'll go back and forth, and that's fine.
Okay. A new king arose over Egypt who did not know Joseph. And he said to his people, look, the Israelite people are much too numerous for us. Let us deal shrewdly with them so that they may not increase. Otherwise, in the event of war, they may join our enemies in fighting against us and rise from the ground. So they set taskmasters over them to oppress them with forced labor. And they built garrison cities for Pharaoh, Pithom and Ramesses. But the more they were oppressed, the more they increased and spread out, so that the Egyptians came to dread the Israelites.
Okay.
Yay.
Any comments?
I just
Yeah.
want to say that there's a series of movies out called Patterns of Evidence that are really interesting about all of this. that goes through
Oh.
all the timelines and everything. So take a peek at those. They're out now. Very archaeologically oriented and going back into all this stuff that we're just getting into. It's called Patterns of Evidence. It's a series of 4 2-hour documentaries on these types of things. They're very good. I'm just saying that because that's extra homework assignments if you want to get really prepared for these things.
Where are they showing? Where is it? Netflix?
They're not showing. You can order them. They're or see them online. They're DVDs.
Yes.
They're interesting. They're interesting. Mhm.
Okay. Yes,
But
Don.
anyway, that was
Okay.
just a.
Thank you. Yes, Don.
Yeah, I think those few verses now are really powerful because they're so relevant to modern, what's going on in the world right now.
Exactly.
Well, first of all, Joseph's previous Pharaoh sponsor is gone, and as they say, a new broom sweeps clean. And all of a sudden, as an employee, he's out of a job, no matter how strong his position was. And then the new management gets really worried. You know, well, these Hebrews are multiplying like crazy and feels threatened. And it's something like the United States. You know,
Yes.
right now we're all the immigration policies have now changed the voting balance, and there's a lot of people who are really scared now that the immigrants that were welcomed in, as the Hebrews were into Egypt, they were welcomed in when Joseph was there. And all of a sudden now they have lots of strength. And so now they're enemies. So I think there's a real parallel between what's going on in the US right now.
Okay, we could say that about lots of different ages, not just with the United States, but there, as someone said, I don't remember who it was before, the Jewish people have had lots of ups and downs. Yes, I thought so, Ricky.
No, that's it.
And so we could say this about this, something similar about every age. Okay, but maybe this is another reason why we're a little more sensitive to this issue, either side of the issue, as Jews, because we see the pluses and minuses of both sides. But what else can we take out of this? I mean, we've just read a few verses, and that's all. Yes, please, Joanne.
Yeah, when Joseph's family came, I don't believe they were taxed. And I don't know if that was changed over the years or not, but that also would be a real sore point.
Yes.
And I don't know if just a little bit later it says they were building and probably almost forced labor, but I doubt if they were being paid for that. And I'm wondering if the Jewish people were also hungry at times. They did have the land, so therefore they could still have the sheep and other things, but there was an unevenness almost to start with, because the Egyptian people during the time of the famine almost didn't have enough to eat either. So it's like a, you know,
What you say is very important. Gail, I'm going to let you speak before I speak. Go ahead, please.
Oh, I was just going to say, it's also interesting that no one of Joseph's standing or tribe, if you would, is his replacement. There's no one in power in the government that represents the Hebrews. There just isn't.
That's right. Well, there's a good reason why historically. Remember, we spoke about the wars among the different pharaohs who would be
I understand
the different families. And
right.
that particular Pharaoh that Joseph worked under is no longer felt to be is no longer in power.
No, I
Everything
understand,
has
but what I'm,
shifted away. That's
no,
right.
I understand that, but I'm just saying that the Hebrew, they no longer have a representative within the government. So that's,
That's right.
it also makes it difficult. And it seems almost, you would think that Joseph would have named the successor if you would.
You would think that. What about the 400 years that's gone by? All we can do is fill in with midrash. There is no, we can't, it's an empty space, a huge empty space of time.
Mhm.
And we really do not, we have to come up with ideas, if you will, as to what might have happened.
I'm wondering why there is a gap of 400 years.
That's a good question. I do not have an answer for that.
Friedman has some theories.
In any
but,
way, shape, or form. Because there may be a lost book. Okay, there may have been some other book that was in there that described everything. Or for purposes of, for the standpoint of literature, maybe they just left a certain part out because the editor said, no, this is going to distract from the direction. Yes, Don, and then Pastor Bruce.
My hero, Immanuel Velikovsky, makes a good case that those missing hundreds of years are not really missing. It's just a realignment of history because of the difference between biblical and Egyptian records. And so in his many books, he closes that gap. So the years are not really missing.
So what does he put in there?
He combines or he aligns the names mentioned between the Egyptian papyruses and the biblical references. And he makes a great case that Egypt was invaded by the Hyksos, who were actually the Amalekites. And so they're not two distinct invasions as the archaeologists believe right now. And I could spend the rest of my life studying
Okay. Thank you for that bit of information. Pastor Bruce.
And I think what Don is saying is also included in that patterns of evidence stuff that it's a very interesting things in that particular thing, going back and forth between the Egyptian record, biblical records, all the different archaeological finds and timelines. It's really very, very interesting. What I found most interesting in this particular thing is the new king, the last statement he makes is that they may not only fight against us, but they may leave the country, which makes me, that particular thing is very interesting because it doesn't matter how long it's been, but it's been carried on that these people are not from here and they may want to go back to wherever they came from. That's already in somebody's mind here. They may go and leave the country. And so the idea is that they're really not home and they really are from somewhere else is very well qualified in that statement by this particular king, no matter how many years it was in between. So that part of the life of these people, the Israelites, certainly was known, I believe, even to this king, that they're from over here and they've always wanted to kind of go back over here, and some of their bones are going to be carried over here. All those kinds of things that are a part of not being over here is in that one statement, if you ask me.
Okay. What I would like to do is just read some comments from Plout. Okay, when we first of all, the word multiplied. the Hebrew word, and this is where I would have enjoyed having Rabbi Miri or Rabbi Roman with us today. The word is related to swarming creatures, so they're being thought of as not just a multitude, but just going wherever they want to go as well. They're swarming.
Flies and locusts from the plagues, maybe.
Possibly. Suggesting that the Israelites proliferated like animals. Okay. The Midrash, and this is all Midrash, the Midrash speculates that they had sextuplets.
Oh,
Oh. The land was filled with them, that phrase. They spread beyond the region of Goshen, which was probably located in the northeastern part of the Delta Dial.
the Nelta
The Nile Delta. Oh, that was really great. And so, in other words, they were outgrowing the land that the original Pharaoh had granted them. And that, now this is all Midrash. We do not have any proof, but we could understand if the words imply certain things, that maybe they were getting too difficult to handle. Okay, and remember, their thinking was different than the Egyptians' thinking. Also, there is another Midrash that the book of Exodus is going to be a war between the god of the moon versus the god of the sun. Okay, and I heard someone speak at the J up in Tucson with regard to this. Okay, and so there are lots of different interpretations out there and ideas as to how this is going to be played out. The phrase "did not know Joseph," as was mentioned, the new king was unaware of what what Joseph had done for the country, or he did not want to know Joseph, for the latter had supported a dynasty now overthrown. So we covered that. In verse 10, what do you think about the Pharaoh or the king saying, let us deal shrewdly with them? Any comments about that? Yes, Don.
It's probably a pretty shrewd observation, but if I were in that same position, I'd have the same concerns. We have
Okay.
fast multiplying group within the country who are really separate. I think a legitimate concern.
Okay. Thank you. Wendy.
Yes. I'm listening to all of this and thinking the comparison, the Egyptians are sounding more and more like the white supremacists of today, that they don't like the fact that the Jews are doing better than they are, but they need the Jews because they're the ones who are making all the products or the food for them, yet they need to control them. And so they're going to do whatever they need to do it, and they're not going to be kind about it.
Okay. David, your hand was still up while Wendy was speaking. So I guess you had something you wanted to add.
Just that I agree with Wendy.
Okay, good husband. Good husband. That's good. Yes, Gail.
Yeah, it's the us and them syndrome that we talked about before.
Yes,
Us and
we
them.
have. That's right.
And, you know, the minority is a threat, and, you know, this is not a new problem or thing. It'll go on forever unless our species changes, which I certainly don't think is going to happen. But us and them, you know, American Indians, you know, put them on reservations because.
Okay.
Well, and the Pharaoh is also afraid that they're going to take the side of Egypt's enemies and fight against them. So
Yes.
that would be a practical concern, I think.
Yes. Good points. Yes, Joanne.
This is far-fetched, but I'm wondering why they needed to kill the boys. Because those are the worker bees, those are the people working, etc., not the girls, because.
Oh, we
they're-
didn't get to that part yet.
Oh, did we get there?
No,
Oh,
we haven't gotten to that part yet.
Oh, okay, sorry, that's 15.
It's coming. It's coming.
Sorry.
Okay. But bring that up again. Okay. Any other comments? What about the word shrewdly?
Friedman says wise. Be wise towards them.
Okay.
Yeah.
The reason I bring up shrewdly, now again, this is where we would need to know the Hebrew if it means wise, but shrewd is also conniving is another word that comes to mind when I hear the word shrewd. And what I would be wondering about is in the stories that pertain to the life of Jacob and also of Joseph. How do they conduct business? How do they conduct themselves? And how are they dealt with by Laban? How does Laban have to deal with Jacob?
Wendy says they conduct business shrewdly.
Well, the point is that it's also a link to the book of Genesis, because Jacob had to deal shrewdly quite often in all of the stories that he is involved with, all of the events in his life. Joseph had to deal shrewdly with all of the events and people in his life. I'm not going to go into all of the different stories unless people want me to. But then you have to say, is what goes around comes around. Yes, Michael.
Well, in regards to the word shrewd, if I may, it doesn't necessarily have to be underhanded or conniving, but it could be, it also could be careful. Could be
yes,
looked at as something to be, be very careful about how you're doing things.
So here, Michael, you are very correct. The word shrewd can mean, and Joanne also, you have wise, careful, but also the same word can imply, somewhat being not just careful, but trying to take advantage of the situation or things like that. So so what I was getting after is we have to be very careful. Again, here, I would love to know the actual word in Hebrew I wish one of the rabbis were with, because that in at least in my mind answer which way we're to read this. Okay, because the stories would be, we can find justification in in all of the different definitions that we want to use for this. So yes, please, Joanne.
Well, I'm formulating this, but it seems to me that some of the patriarchs actually had handshakes to deal with something and they also would they say written, but I don't know what they would have written on, like a stone or something. I'm not real sure about how that occurred. But this was the shrewdness was against them rather than anything else. It was, they were planned without without them agreeing to it in any way. So this is why, I guess that's my shrewdness or something, I'm
Okay.
thinking against them more than anything else. Yeah.
Very good. Any other comments about this paragraph? Yes, the commentary. There's also commentary about the taxation. Okay, that this was to try to catch up on all the monies, if you will, that were not paid by these people, the Israelites. After all those years, there is a so that they would force them, if you will, Hebrews into a form of forced labor. Okay, there's an English term for that, corvée. Actually, it's French, but it is it has been adopted into the English language. So it's almost like making them into indentured servants, if you will. But it's a labor, but they have to pay it back through labor. Yeah. By the way, I'm in the midst of reading some information about what I'm trying to Franklin Roosevelt's administration, and all of the programs. If you think about it, these people could not work. They had to have some form of labor, and it was doing for the country. And they did it willingly at first. But then again, over time, different things came along. Well, maybe this is not the best policy, because some people interpreted as the country was still taking advantage of those people. So it's an analogous situation. For the time, though, what was done was probably the best thought out plan to get us out of the doldrums. Yes, please, Don.
Yeah, what do you think it means when the new king of Egypt says that the Israelites are mightier than we are? Do the Israelites arm independently, or do they? I guess we don't know any more than that, but
We don't.
I'm wondering what would pose that threat to the king. I can understand if there's more Israelites, but if they're mightier, then they must have been armed in some way.
I don't know the best answer for that. There's nothing written. There's nothing. All we can do is speculate about all of these things. There's no firm answer. We can raise more questions. We can try to answer questions. There are lots of different videos that I've taken time to look from other groups of people that have filled in with Midrash. By the way, there is a series of books in the Temple Library entitled "The Legends of the Jews" by Rabbi Ginsburg. And it goes through a lot of different things, but when you read it, you recognize that it is all Midrash. One Midrash after another, as opposed to standard interpretation of Torah. So it's okay. It tries to fill in missing pieces. So if anyone is interested, that is in our library. So you've also raised an interesting take on this. I don't think there's any good answer for any of these questions, because there's nothing written. It's only what other people have said that might have taken place during that, and we can latch on to that, or we may not. But there's so many different interpretations out there, it becomes rather difficult, I think. The Egyptians came to dread the Israelites. Okay, any ideas?
Marty,
Yes.
I have a question. I'm wondering what difference the Egyptians saw in the Israelites from themselves. What specifically bugged them? Color of their skin, the way they spoke, it doesn't say why.
Well, the biggest thing that comes to mind, if we carry over some of the ideas from the book of Genesis, the biggie is that we believed, or the Israelites believed, in one God.
But that isn't mentioned.
That's right. It's not mentioned. But the one thing, but the Egyptians believed in multiple gods.
Yeah.
And I mean, right off the bat, there's a big difference. One God versus many gods. Now, there may be others that aren't spoken of here. Maybe it's the way they prepared their food.
Now, it's interesting. It would be interesting to know what they really objected to or what they thought was different.
I don't know. Maybe it was because they had to have a Sabbath, or they were thinking of that.
Maybe they saw the Israelites as very passive people, easily to take advantage of in some way. They got a message.
I don't know. Yeah, we don't know that.
Message, because you can apply it almost over the years, over the centuries till today.
Yes, but we're thinking back then. They were also concerned that there may be an uprising, that they may side with the enemies, things like that. So this is also a possible speculation. We're only, yes, Joanne.
Well, I was looking at the Egyptians came to dread the Israelites. And I'm wondering, is that another word for hate? To dread them because they were so prolific, dread them because of the way they dressed. What does the word dread mean? Because the Egyptians are really in they are in charge. So to dread the Israelites, why?
Why would they fear the Israelites?
A big fear.
So this is what we're talking about, all of these different things.
Yeah.
And fear we could talk a little bit about fear if you want to. Yes, David. It's another Wendy hand.
Go back to the movie for a minute, in the Ten Commandments, when they called them the stiff-necked Hebrew slaves. And they were stubborn, They had one purpose in mind. They were focused on what they wanted, what their beliefs were. The Egyptians weren't. They may have been more complacent than they should have been. And they're watching these people who are smart, who have goals, even though it takes them forever. And that's difficult to deal with because they're not looking at the Egyptians as the Almighty. They're looking up at the unseen God.
Right.
And that's difficult.
Okay. So I think that says a lot. And I think that for all of these reasons, the Egyptians would fear them, maybe hate them, maybe misunderstand them. Okay. Yes, Don.
But we know from this text that the Egyptians had enemies, and
Yes.
and their fear was that the Israelites would align with their enemies.
Yes.
So they had within their frontiers, within their boundaries, they had a group that could align with people they already had identified as enemies. So it's not a completely unfounded fear. But what we don't know is if any of the Israelites try to placate the Egyptians or let them know, don't worry, we're with you if any hostilities start up.
Well, this is one of the problems of being the other. And that was mentioned by someone else earlier. I think Gail brought it out, or Ricky, and the other, it has a lot of trappings. When you think of people, either they're with you or against them. And that's not the real world. That is a fantasy world that each one of us can create for our own, to justify our own thoughts, our own actions, things like that. But basically, when you travel around the world, you find out that people all want to say the same thing. It's the governments that want the differences. The people just want food on their table, roof over their head, that their children can grow up to be adults. What they want is totally different than what the governments want. One deals with just surviving, the other one with power, money and power. So I don't know which way. I don't know. I think this is purposefully left empty to encourage us to think about all of this and what could happen given these circumstances. I think that's why the blank space. Yes, Joanne, please.
I've thought of a different word or different thinking about dread. Joseph was the top person under the Pharaoh. He had all these siblings, nieces, nephews, et cetera, et cetera. He would have placed them in different parts of the government, and those placements might have continued so that each pharaoh, they knew, and may have helped some pharaohs and not helped other ones, but the pharaoh that we're talking about now, they had to have known that might be their dread, because they know they're kind of throughout all of Egypt and in command of things, etc. That just, I don't know. I keep thinking of dread, and I would dread it if, somebody came into my home and was telling me what to do about it.
It's a good point also.
Yeah.
Any other comments before we read verses 13 and 14? Okay, if somebody would care to read verse 13 and 14.
Oh, okay, I'll continue. The Egyptians ruthlessly imposed upon the Israelites the various labors that they had made them perform. Ruthlessly, they made life bitter for them with harsh labor at mortar and bricks and with all sorts of tasks in the field.
Okay. Any comments?
Whoa.
There was no Ruth there.
That's ruthless.
Little Sukkot humor.
Okay, okay.
What did you say? I didn't hear you.
I said there was no Ruth.
Oh,
Well,
Not till-
you
not
bring
till
up an
later.
interest. You bring up something interesting. It is the word means in cruel fashion. Okay. It's left up to each one of us as to what we can imagine being cruel. Later on, it becomes more and more explicit. But any other ideas about the word ruthless?
If it indeed made their lives bitter,
mhm.
anytime you start feeling bitter based on anything, and the word ruthless is used twice here,
Mm-hmm.
it means that there's another expression that I'm thinking of in the scripture that says, do not embitter your children. Do not, cause them to be embittered towards you. Well, there's that idea that you're not treating them properly, if that's the case with your own children. And so obviously they're not treating them properly.
Okay, very good. Any other comments? We're going to run into this in one other aspect later on. This is going to be years from now. So I'm going to implore you to think about it. Yes, Grace.
I was looking at the commentary, and they were treated so ruthlessly as to reduce them into complete slavery.
Okay. Good point. So this is going to also come up in the book of Leviticus when we get to it, and how the law should be, how you deal with ethical law. And it's going to be, it'll come back. We'll be able to address this later on too, because being ruthless, you can abandon all law, natural law, or the laws of God. You just are going to do harmful acts, obviously murdering being one of the worst, okay, if not the worst. But it's so is this also a play on the Noahide laws? I have not, we're still not out of the book of Genesis. Yes, Don.
Well, at this point, it's obvious that the Egyptians are afraid of the Israelites. The reaction is to subjugate them. And it usually, especially in a hierarchy like the Egyptians, that power demands above all loyalty. and above all, the Israelites are only loyal to God. And so that's never going to work for the Egyptians. So it's like a death spiral situation where Pharaoh demands loyalties. The Israelites are not going to split their loyalty to God, and it can only get worse. So, I mean, that's what I see developing, is that the Egyptians are going to keep pounding harder, and the Israelites are going to continue to resist harder. And this sets the stage for the ultimate exodus.
Okay. I think that that's important. It's also another important commentary on this. We are setting the stage for, also in these few words, the stage for what's to come of slavery. In other words, we're already starting to see the stage being set for how the Jewish people or the Israelites are being treated. Their lives are going to be made more bitter and hard, with harsh labor at mortar and bricks and other tasks in the field. And it's going to be spelled out in detail for us in several weeks from now. Any other comments about this? There's a reason why I brought this into, yes, Pastor Bruce.
I found another word that I don't think we've said yet, and that's the word treacherous, treacherously.
Yes.
And so I wasn't sure if we'd said that word yet, but I was just looking through some other concordances and things of like words from Hebrew and stuff, and treacherously is a word that is used here as well.
Okay.
That's an interesting, treacherous is an interesting word. Treason comes from that too, does it not?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. Interesting.
So yes, Joanne, and then Gail.
I'm wondering, are both parties treacherous? In other words, the Israelites, are they treacherous? And is the Egyptians also treacherous? So that at least at first, I'm sure there must have been some ungive and untake or something here. They were working up to a battle of some sort, and the Egyptians kind of took over. But the word treacherous to me in this occasion seems to be from both parties. I don't know. We haven't talked about that, but there had to be some.
Well, one is dealing with the way the book is written. The way it's written suggests that the Egyptians are the ones that take this this interpretation a little too far, and they start to behave in a way where they with physical acts of harm, not just verbal, not just thoughts. They have allowed themselves to take action in a way that is not very humane. Yeah. That is, yes, I know Gail had her hand up before. Oh, you didn't. Okay, Pastor Bruce, why don't you?
But the other word that I found was oppression.
Yes. So this is setting the stage for the entire Passover service, if you will, because we use these same words at the beginning the Passover Haggadah. Okay. Yes, Michael.
Yes, in response to Joanne, I would say that the Egyptians used treachery against the Israelites, and their behavior when they enslaved the Israelites, they used it in a manner which the word treachery would apply.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. I think the distinction is being made here. Any other discussion, or if we do have the ability to do maybe, yeah, we can probably do verses 15 and 16. So if somebody would care to read that. David, I see you grabbing your book.
Yeah, I've got mine here, if he doesn't.
I can read.
David, I think you're
Gail
muted. Yes, David, you're muted.
Gail spoke up. Gail said she,
Unmuted. It's better, yes.
You can, Gail, did you want to read it or?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can. Just
No,
those
I
two
can-
verses. Just those two verses.
Yeah, that's all. I don't think we have time to discuss much more.
And the king of Egypt
And the
said
king
to
of Egypt,
And the king of Egypt said to the
Right.
Hebrew midwives, of whom the name of one was Shiphrah, and the name of the second was Puah. And he said, when you deliver the Hebrew women and you look at the two stones, if it's a boy, then kill him. And if it's a girl, then she'll live.
Okay, that's it.
And Friedman has an interesting comment on the word stones.
Yes, okay.
He said it could refer to either the birthing stones
Right.
or testicles of a boy.
ah,
Hmm. That's Friedman.
Okay. Interesting. So any comments about this?
I think Joanne had the comment before about why do that if the people that were working were the people they enslaving, were the women just as strong as the men, or what? But yeah, it's kind of an odd thing there with the reasons, but I guess the main thing is, like in modern day China, let's just give that example because it's true. They oftentimes will kill the girl. They kill the girls in
right.
China. It's the opposite. But I'm just saying it's because they honor the boys. But in this case, what China's finding is that they're not their population growth is decreasing. No matter who you kill off, your population growth is decreasing.
Right.
Period. No matter who it is.
Okay. Hey, Ricky.
Yeah, I mean, it's obvious they feared the males of the tribe, but every time I see this, I think, boy, they got their medical facts wrong. If they're worried about the growth of the population, one man can inseminate how many women and lots of children being born, but the woman takes 9 months and plus a little recovery time. So, killing off, if you leave one man and 100 women, you still have the population growth. They just got it backwards. But I don't know if they knew then how babies were conceived. So if they didn't know, then they didn't know. I don't know. But anyway, I always think that they get it wrong when they do it the way they did it here.
Okay.
Kill off the women because they then can't produce. If the men can play with themselves, pardon my pun, but not, create children. I didn't mean it the way it started, but I finished the sentence anyway. So, that's backwards. If you want to keep the population down.
It's okay. It's okay. Yeah, I don't know if you'll need an oral surgeon or a podiatrist. Anyway, yes, Don.
That's just a mind-blowing couple of verses stuck in there, that,
Yeah.
oh, the Pharaoh says, okay, well, I want you to kill all the male babies. I mean, it's just, where did that come from? And you have to wonder, what would that accomplish? I mean, it doesn't say that the Israelite women wouldn't mate with the Egyptian men.
Mhm.
It says is we're going to stop producing male Israelites, and you figure, well, before a male could be useful in the army, he'd probably have to be 15 or 16 anyway. So, let's looking ahead 15 or 16 years for any useful effect from that. I actually don't understand where that's coming from, but it is mind-blowing.
Well, let's try to put ourselves into the minds of the prevailing minds of the time, if you will. And what was the role of the man versus that of the female at that time in world history?
Hunter-gatherer, but we're past that.
Yes, we are. But at that particular point in time, how does one pass down wealth in a family at that time?
Males.
The first
Now,
son.
right. How does one select a leader
Male.
The male.
at that time? Okay. David, I don't know, your screen is frozen, David. Were you going to say something?
No, Wendy wanted to say something.
Okay, I'm
She is
sorry,
on her way.
I didn't realize. Okay.
Well, that's okay, Marty. You got a lot of people. I'll forgive you this time. Actually, when I was thinking about what you were saying, where they're killing the males and letting the females live, well, to start with, they're trying to really hurt these people as best as they can. So one goes to the typical male thing. They don't want the soldiers there. They don't want the leaders of the family around, so they get rid of them. The women they know can bear children, and to oppress the people a little bit more, their soldiers can take the Jewish women and make them their concubines. They're slaves. They have no say in the matter.
That's
So
right.
that really hurts the people in every aspect.
Exactly. Very good point. Very good series of points. So any other comments about this? Well, the other thing that unfortunately, I'm not an advocate. That's why I keep saying at that time in world history, that's the way things were done. But the men were also the leaders of the time. They could have multiple wives. We haven't read anything about a wife having multiple husbands. So a man was still a very powerful figure in those societies in and around that area of the world. I cannot speak for other areas of the world. But fortunately, things have changed. It took a long time. I mean, we're looking at thousands of years before the world changed. It is not an overnight event. But this is something very important to remember, and think of the different ramifications of that.
Things are so much better today, Marty,
Oh yeah.
Things are so much better.
Somewhat better.
The world is so we're at peace, and it's just wonderful. It's like a paradise right now.
Uh,
Well, yes and no.
Yeah.
Okay, Gail, yes, please.
I beg to disappear or disagree.
Exactly.
I was going to say, the world has not changed, it's changing.
Yes,
Exactly.
We're a long way from getting there, and
I would agree. I would
I mean,
agree.
look at women in Afghanistan, right there, Michael.
Yeah, it's going to be a nightmare for them.
Well,
right
hopefully
now.
not. Hopefully, we've got enough educated people there that maybe it won't be quite so bad, but,
Well, yeah, I wasn't,
and not just there, you know.
Right. That's
But
why I said somewhat, somewhat.
Right.
It's not, you know,
I wasn't quite,
oh,
I
74
wasn't quite
cents on
honest
the
with my
dollar, you know, I mean,
statement, so I know.
But no, it can, that issue continues to be an issue. There's no having two
There's no issue
daughters,
about it.
having two daughters, I know those issues
Yeah.
well. But I think that at that point in world history, I think their thinking was different. I'm going to stop at this point, and we're going to pick up with the commentary about. We're going to read a little more in the paragraph, and then I have a very good commentary, I think, about Shifra and Pua. Because it's an interesting way of looking at them. Okay, because we're going to read that they don't follow the rules. Okay,
they're clever. They're
so
shrewd to use our
it's very
power.
helpful for us in many ways. Okay, because of how things develop, but it becomes there are some interesting aspects of Egyptian life that I think have to be discussed also. Okay. Any other comments? And then we can, because I have nothing else to add, and at this point, but we'll get into it next week. Any other comments, announcements, or anything that anyone needs to make? Or